Welcome to Coach's Corner, everyone. I am your host, Coach Tripp. I am with a special guest today, Dr. Gary White. We call Coach White. Coach, such an honor to have you on my show today.
Thank you, Paul. It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Oh my gosh, you've had such an amazing life. I want to start at the very beginning, as I do most of my guests.
Okay.
Talk about where you grew up and your mom and dad and any siblings that you have, and talk about your hometown.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in Gadsden, Alabama. It's about 100 miles from Tuscaloosa to there, and I had two wonderful parents. My dad worked at the Goodyear all of his life. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and
Mm-hmm.
I tell people all the time I was drugged from an early age. I was drugged to church every time the doors were open, and my brother and sister and I, who all members of my family now, have passed away. My brother passed away a couple of years ago, and my sister about 5 years ago. So my mom and dad, of course, passed away. Well, it's amazing. My dad passed away a month before Coach Bryant.
Oh, wow.
So I lost actually two dads there within a month because Coach Bryant was such he was a father figure to all of us that played and was associated with him. And so it was really a difficult month there, to say the least. And but it was a wonderful experience growing up in Gadsden. I grew up in a little community called Hooks Lake. It was named that because of a community lake there that was everybody went to swim in and had a dance hall and all of that good stuff. So there was about 12 or 15 of us young boys that grew up in that community, and they were such close friends of mine and always have been. Most of them now have passed away, but it was just awesome. I tell people all the time, I would not take anything for growing up in that community with those boys that I grew up with. They were just wonderful friends and awesome neighbors.
Oh my gosh, Coach. And did some of those friends of yours in high school, did they go to attend the university when you did?
Not that group. Some of my high school mates did.
Yeah.
Gadsden High School, graduated there in 1957, and my last year there, we had a new coach. His name was Jerry Wadford, and Coach Wadford had played here at the University of Alabama, was an all-SEC guard, and had played for the St. Louis Cardinals, I believe, one year, and got injured or something. I can't exactly, but anyway, Gadsden High hired him as the head football coach, and while he was there, he came to me one day and said, "Would you like to go to the University of Alabama?" Well, I never had even thought about ever going to college, to be honest. And I said, "Well, certainly I would." And he said, "Well, I've talked with the coach down there. Coach Lou Bostic was his position coach, and he's willing to give you a part scholarship if you want to come to school down there." And I said, "Okay." And so I told my parents that, and I set up a meeting with Coach Bostic, and some of my football teammates rode down with me from Gadsden, and I went in to see Coach Bostic, and we had a good visit, and he told me that he'd give me tuition fees to come and be a manager. And so in the fall of 57, I reported to campus, and the rest of it's history.
Well, those Coach Ayers Whitworth, who had 3 losing seasons.
Coach
You were
Whitworth,
there.
Coach Whitworth, the head coach, and it was really a unique situation. I tell people all the time, I've never seen anything like this in my entire life. But Coach Whitworth was the head coach, and then his line coach, Coach Hank Crisp, he was the athletic director. I tell people all the time I would like to have been a gnat on the wall during their staff meetings to see transpired in there. But anyway, it was kind of a difficult situation, I'm sure, with that being the position that they were in. But anyway, that was what was going on my freshman year. And of course, well, we only won 2 games, and then Coach Bryant came in December from Texas A&M. And
Coach, talk about that meeting, not only with the team, but when he took the managers in for a meeting. Tell about that story.
oh yeah, that was something. Sure enough, we all go into his office, and it was in Old Moore Hall there on the University of Alabama campus and on University Boulevard. And the offices were really old, you know. Of course, he upgraded all of that throughout the years. But anyway, we go in there, and there's some of those guys I never had seen before. And I don't know exactly what positions they had. But anyway, Coach Bryant called us in there, and he told us, he said, I'm firing everybody but the head coach. I meant the head manager, and head manager was Bert Jones. And so I left out of there, and I was really, I didn't know what I was going to do. I called my dad that night, and I said, we have this new coach. And I didn't know a lot about Coach Bryant, and nobody else did either. It didn't take us long to find out. So he meant what he said. And so anyway, I called my father and asked him if he thought he could help me get that one semester. And I tell you what, let me back up just a minute. When I was, I think 9 years old, my brother was 11 years old. Well, my father came home from a Goodyear one afternoon. He usually got off at 3. Well, he was a little late that day. And so my brother and I were playing out in the front yard, and here comes a truck. And on that truck was a horse, a red and white horse. And it turned up into our driveway. And I thought, man, and we had several acres there we grew up on. And my brother and I started jumping up and down. Boy, Dad just bought us a horse. We're going to have a big time, play cowboys and Indians, all that wonderful stuff. Well, about 5 minutes later, here come another truck. And the other truck had the farm implements on it. And so it didn't take us long to realize that we were not going to be playing with that horse. We were going to be out plowing in the field out back. And so that's what we did at an early age. And I'm thankful to this day that my dad did that. A lot of the neighborhood kids, they didn't have that kind of opportunity, but we did. And so anyway, when Coach Bryant told us that we would have to, he would check us out and see who wanted to work. And in the fall, the ones that would work, he would give them some aid. And so my dad, he had told me that night when I called that, well, you need to come on back and I'll get you a job at Goodyear. Well, meantime, I'd already had a taste of the good life, you might say, at the university. I thought was not going back to Goodyear, although I was appreciative of what all they'd done for our family. But anyway, I told him, I said, well, if you'll pay my way this one semester, I said, I guarantee you in the fall I'll be on scholarship. And because I knew growing up and having worked out in the fields and plowed and all of that stuff, I didn't think there was anybody that's going to be able to outwork me in that position. So in the fall, I came back and there was 2 managers, Bert and myself. Everybody else had departed.
Wow. What a great story to get in there and get your foot in the door. What an amazing career. You ended up getting your doctorate and being associate athletic director. In that first meeting, I want to take you back again to that first meeting Coach Bryant had. And I talked about this throughout my coaching career, playing career, and my broadcasting career. And I actually mentioned it on my show this week, earlier in the week, that Coach Bryant had a quote, "Everyone does the big things, but are you willing to do the little things that make the difference between winning and losing?" Now, I know Coach Bryant said that, and he said it a bunch to our team, but I didn't realize he said it in that very first meeting, along with another promise 4 years later. Coach, talk about that.
That was his philosophy that he always stuck with, Paul. And of course, those little things turn into big things. He always told us that everybody does the big things, but
Right.
very few do the little things. And that was just one of the little things that he started out doing to build that program, is to get people in place that were willing to work and be loyal to him. And so when we got back in the fall of '58, and Bert was head manager and I was assistant head manager, well, Bert graduated in January, and I took over in January and was head manager for the 59, 60, and 61 teams on full scholarships. So,
Wow.
and the managers, people think of them as water boys, but they're not. They're really busy. You kind of operating in a business world, you might say, because I know many nights I worked all night packing trunks and getting ready for the team to travel out of town, or
Right.
get things ready for our home games and that kind of thing. But it was those little things that Coach Bryant taught us, about going to class, getting up early, going to your meals, not being late for meetings, and working your tail off out there in the practice to get better, and doing the little things there in practice to make yourself more valuable to the team and to yourself, and those kind of things. And that's just a few of them. But as you know from having played, there's a countless number of little things that involve into big things, and those big things then turn into national championships. And he had 6 of them, and that was pretty awesome.
How many rings do you have, Coach?
I have 7. I had the 6th Coach Bryant, one under Coach Stallings.
Coach Mel Moore had 10, I believe, right? Before when he passed.
That's right.
Yeah, 10 rings. Coach, I want to ask you, and I forgot to ask Coach Mel Moore before he passed away. He came out, he was so gracious to come on my show. Why did he always say push, push, push? Was it maybe I'll ask Jim Bunch when I have Jimmy Bunch on, but Coach Mel Moore was a special person, man. And Coach Bryant loved him. And Coach Bryant would come down from that tower, and we knew somebody was in trouble, and we didn't know if it was a player or a coach.
You never knew, you'd hear that chain clink when it hit the side of the bar, and you knew then he was coming, but you didn't know where he was going. And was something. I was down on that field a lot of times when I'd hear that thing clink, and here he would come, and everybody would just tighten up, and it was even the coaches would turn their eyes up there because they didn't know if he was coming to help one of them correct someone or
Nope.
not. So everybody was anticipating that move right there, and it was always something else, I tell you.
D. Powell and Coach Gene Stallings. They were both part of Junction Boys, but they were also at Alabama in 1958. And they mentioned that practice, the training camp was harder than Junction. Talk about how many guys were on that very first squad in the LSU game in 1958.
Well, Coach Bryant brought with him Coach Stallings and D. Powell. D was only there one semester, and he had a commitment to the Air Force, so he was there the spring of '58. But he also brought Bobby Drake Keith, who had gone through practice out there, and then of course Elwood Kettler was one of the coaches, Phil Cutchin, Pat James, Carney Lashley, Sam Bailey. All those people were with him when at Junction when he took the players out there in the desert. You might say it wasn't a desert, but it felt like it, I'm sure. But way the spring of '58, getting prepared for that fall was unreal. We had a gymnasium up on the 3rd floor of the athletic offices, and that was where the players went to work out, and there were stations in there. We only had one set of barbells. There was no weights at all, just that one set of barbells, and they did bench presses with that. But they would, we had the wrestling mats up there. We had some blocking dummies up there, all kinds of stuff. And once they stepped in, they were only up there an hour, but once they stepped in that gym, I mean, they never slowed down till they walked back out. Well, through the spring of doing that, and then going through spring practice, which spring practice was really, really hard. We had quite a few players that decided they didn't want to be a part of the team, and they left. And then in the summer, he sent all of them a letter, and he described what weight he wanted them to come back in. Well, some of them didn't make that weight, so that cut the list on down. And then some of them, we had three that and I'm not calling in names here. I don't want to do that, but we had three that were really overweight, and they went down here in the forest and camped out for 3 or 4 days to try to lose weight. Well, the only problem was that is they were not eating. They got dehydrated and they came back, and so they didn't last but maybe 1 or 2 sessions of practice. But the practices were such that when you stepped on the field, that you were running continuously, and then they didn't get water at all. You were running continuously from the time you stepped on that field till the time practice was over. And that was a far cry from what they had been doing under Coach Whitworth. And there was some good athletes that left. Coach Bryant said later on that if he had it do all over with again, he would have done it differently, because there was some really good athletes that left. And then we line up in the fall of '58 against LSU down there in Mobile, and we've only got 36 players on the team. Some that stayed back home, 4 or 5 that were injured, and they ended up being injured permanently because we didn't have the medical doings that they have this day and time. They were due to tendons or whatnot getting torn up in knees, and then they'd operate on them. You could just about bet from that operation that they were through playing, because there just wasn't any way that they could come back from it. Of course, now if they were here now and did that, it would be a lot different for them. They'd probably be able to come back and play ball from it. But we go down to LSU, to go down to Mobile and play LSU, and we had a fairly decent night. LSU beat us by, I think, 13-3. We intercepted a pass and run it back part way and couldn't get it across the goal line, and ended up kicking a field goal. But I think that was one of their lowest scores that year. They won the national championship, but I think we let the people know from then on that this was a different Alabama. And the thing about the '58 season is a lot of the people based on 55, 56, and 57 had listed Alabama as their homecoming game, because that was, with the tradition that we had, that was pretty big homecoming for them to beat us. A lot of regions after the game and all that stuff. Well, that year we played in 3 or 4 homecoming games, and we beat them up so bad the next week they didn't win. And after that, that ended the homecoming day. So needless to say, we got off start there where we were punished pretty good football field. And so then in '59, of course, we started getting much better and everything. He started getting some good recruits in here, and it started turning around. But '58 was the marquee year for the program, no doubt about that.
Yeah, he set the tone, no nonsense. And then he promised the guys, if you stayed here 4 years, which only a handful, not many did, he'd win a national championship. And that first one
freshman.
Why was the first one different? Validation. I know him and Coach Stallings wrote a book, How to Build a Championship Team, in 1961. But talk about that first national championship team.
Well, the first national championship team, was the 61 team, was the most unreal team that I was around. Worked at the university for that 38 years, around
Wow.
football especially. I worked with all sports, but mainly football. And the 61 team, Coach Bryant preached togetherness and oneness. And I have never, except for the 92 team, they came close to the 61 team, but the 61 team had the most oneness and togetherness of any team that I saw. We were, where you'd see one of us, you'd see all of us, generally speaking, whether it was at the movies or out to eat or something like that. We just developed a camaraderie that I can't even describe. You know, we had lost Darwin Holt this past week. He was one of our defensive leaders. We've lost 29 players off of that team thus far, but it's just hard to describe the camaraderie that we had as a team and as a coaching staff too. I think Coach Bryant probably always felt like that was his best team.
Yeah, the struggle, the sacrifice that you go through together brings people together. It brings you closer together.
That's right.
Unity.
That's right.
And that's what, military leaders believe in the same thing. Coach, Coach Bryant had a favorite player. I had a favorite player. If any coach tells me or tells you or tells anybody they don't have favorite players, they're lying, because I had a favorite player. Coach Bryant's was Pat Trammell, I believe.
That's right.
That really hurt him hard when Pat passed away. But talk about the relationship he had, and talk about the foundation that Coach Bryant set up. And it started with Pat's kids, but it grew to all his players' kids being paid tuition at Alabama.
Well, Pat was a leader that nobody, went against. I mean, when he said something, when he was on the field playing quarterback, it was just the same as Coach Bryant was out there. He had the same toughness and mentality that Coach Bryant did. I recall being out there out one time giving the players water, and one of the players said something, and Pat, he'd let out a couple of words that I can't say on here, but anyway, he told him if they didn't shut up, they'd be over there next to Coach Bryant watching the game, and they shut up. That was kind of leadership mentality that he had. He didn't, when he was on that field as director of operations, you might say, nobody put, because he was really a tough customer. And Pat smoked cigars. He was in pre-med and really a smart dude. I tell you, Pat and I were fairly close, and I go up to see him lots of time. He'd be there smoking a cigar and studying and everything. In 1961, I really believe Coach Bryant felt like finally we were going to beat Tennessee. And, Tennessee was his big rival, because when he was in school, he didn't play against Auburn. We had that separation there for years where Alabama and Auburn didn't play each other. But we always played Tennessee, and he did not like Tennessee at all. And to him, that was the big game. And so on Monday before that game, Coach Lashley, who was kind of a special assistant as well as coach to Coach Bryant, I think he may have coached him in college some. But anyway, Coach Lashley came up to me and said, "I've got this box of cigars, and Coach Bryant wants you to put it in the trunk, and after the game, when he calls for them, will you give them to him?" I said, "Okay." So that we played Tennessee in Legion Field and ended up beating them, I think, 34-3, if I remember correctly. And so sure enough, Coach Bryant wanted that box of cigars. Well, I go get the cigars out out of the trunk and take them to him, and he passes out 3 or 4. Well, the sports information director said, "Coach said the press needs you outside." So he handed me. He said, "Here, Gary, take these and pass the rest of them out." So I go over to Pat Trammell, and Pat, he smoked those real expensive cigars. So these were Tampa Bays or something like that. I forgot, cheap ones. I go over to Pat and I said, "You want a cigar, Pat?" And he said, "No." He said, "I'll smoke my own." He reached in his. Then we were wearing travel jackets, so everybody was dressed just alike. So he reached in his inside pocket and took out one of those expensive cigars and fired it up. So that was the beginning of our cigar smoking right there.
Oh, you were part of the beginning of the cigar
Yeah.
celebration to beat Tennessee. What a great story, Coach.
So
Oh my gosh.
that was when it all started with the cigars, and it's gone on every year since then. Every time we beat them, so still going on today. I think that
Yes, it is.
everybody in the stadium now smokes as a result of it.
Coach, you worked for Coach Bryant over 24 years, and you said he never lied to you one time.
Never, never.
Gosh.
He was always Coach Bryant was always honest and straightforward. He never, the thing about it. I go in and talk with him and say, "Coach, would you do this or that?" And he'll say, "I'll take care of it." And I never saw him write anything down. I don't know when you go in his office, but I never saw him write anything down. But a day or two later, he'd call me back in there, "Gary, here's what it is, or here's what you need to do," and that kind of thing. And it was done. And he had a photographic memory, evidently, because I never saw him write anything down. And he would always, he never, when you went to him and you needed something, it got done. It was never anything. And he never stood over your shoulder and to see if you were doing the job or whatnot. You had a job to do and you wanted to bust your tail to do it to please him, because
Right.
you loved him so much and respected him so much till
Mm-hmm.
you did not want to let him down. And that's the way I felt. And I know that all the players, they might not have felt that way when they were playing, but after they got through and looked back on it, all of them loved him and wanted to do what was pleasing to him and that kind of thing.
I still do a segment on my show called The Bare Facts.
Do you?
Oh yeah, I talk about his coaching style and philosophy. It's so much fun. Back in the day, he would wrestle. They would have wrestling, and then boxing came in. Maybe Coach Donahue and those guys from the Navy, they boxed. But I remember we were having a lot of fights one time, and in 1981, I think it was, and he got the gloves out, and Larry Roberts and Brent Sewell went at it. As we remember that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We didn't have another fight the rest of the year after that boxing match, Coach.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. One time we lived in Freedman Hall for years till they built when the Bryant Hall was built, it was called the New Athletic Dorm, and it opened in '63, I think it was. But anyway, they named it Paul Bryant Hall in '65. But before that, we lived in Freedman Hall, and we would have the training table, for the ones that graded out winners in the game. And so some way Coach Bryant developed this connection with this chocolate syrup company. And I can't remember the name of it, but it was the best chocolate syrup I've ever tasted. You could put milk and turn your milk into chocolate milk, or you could put ice cream or whatnot. But anyway, two of the players came in. It was a rough day. It's like Tuesday or Wednesday. You know how those days always
work days, yeah.
were. And anyway, they sat down, and some way one of those chocolate syrup containers had been left on the table. Well, there wasn't much in it, and I was sitting there, and both of them sat down with me, and we were the only three at the table. And so they got to arguing about that little deal, and they said, "Well, let's just go outside and settle it." Well, I'm not going to tell you who the two were, but they go outside, and the parking lot is not paved. It's all red dirt and clay. So in a few minutes, they come back in, and both of them are red all over. I mean, they had been out there and been going at it over that little bit of syrup. Like nothing ever happened, and finished eating it, and left out after dinner, just like nothing ever happened. But they settled it out there, whatever it was. I didn't go out there with them.
Oh my gosh. Coach, you kept his books. Coach Bryant donated selflessly to numerous charities, churches, and individuals who he thought were a worthy cause. And I think I'm going to mention a name, and you just tell me about him. John Croyle.
Oh, well, Coach Bryant loved John, and he loved the I think John had talked to him a time or two about building that ranch, Big Oak Ranch. And I think John had served as a counselor at one of those, seemed like over in Mississippi. I can't be sure about that, but it was a ranch similar to the one that he wanted set up.
Right.
And so Coach Bryant contributed to that, helped him get started. So did John Hanna. And anyway, the Coach Bryant, he contributed to several churches around. I became, after I got saved in 1973, I became sponsor of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. In December of every year, Coach Bryant would give me a big check to carry us through the year to supply our Coca-Colas and drinks and all of that stuff and snacks throughout the year, because we met every Wednesday night at 9:00. And in addition to that, of course, he gave to some churches in Arkansas and here in Alabama. But he had a heart of gold that a lot of people don't know about. They saw him one way, on TV or at a game and that kind of thing. He really cared about charity things and about the church and that kind of thing. So
absolutely. Couple more questions, Coach. You were a dorm director for many years. My dorm director was Jack Rutledge, a great man. Talk a little bit about Coach Rutledge.
Well, Jack, this is what's so amazing. Jack was born, I think, in Oaks Bluff, Alabama. Oaks Bluff is right, I guess, 10 miles from Gadsden.
Wow.
Well, Jack and I came together here in 57. He was a fullback at Woodlawn, I think, made All-American up there, and he played then in 57 and on up to, I forgot what year they went to two platoon, but we had a freshman team, and Jack was on that freshman team as a fullback. When Coach Bryant came here, he started out as fullback, but it was not long before he moved him to guard, and Jack developed into an outstanding guard. He started in 61 on that national championship team, but this is the thing about it. One day we were sitting around talking, and when he told me he was born in Oaks Bluff, a lot of my relatives were from Oaks Bluff, the McCoys, on my mother's side of the family, and so we got to comparing notes and found out he and I were about third or fourth cousins. And then he took over as Bryant Hall, I forgot what year, but did a super job of coordinating that, as well as still coaching on the field. He was handling the special teams and did an outstanding job of coaching. And he was just a guy that left this world far too soon.
Yeah.
And I truly love Jack. He was such a wonderful guy to be around.
Yes, he was, boy. He was so full of life, man, and so happy all the time. I got one bone to pick, and I know we talked about this before, and tickets for former Alabama players, especially 60 and older in the upper deck end zone. I'm sorry, but I got to call a spade a spade. Coach Bryant would be rolling over in his grave if he ever knew that was happening. Well, and I think that needs to be changed at the university.
I do too. He would because when he was live and athletic director, the tickets for all the players were downstairs in the lower deck. Of course, we didn't have upper deck either, but they were good tickets.
Right.
Former players were taken care of. How they've got to be like they have now, there's a few in the lower deck, but most of them are in the upper deck. And I don't know why that they can't take part of the student section or something and turn that into to the A club section and put everything, because it's kind of a time of fellowship. I initiated, while I was associate athletic director, initiated the A club room there where we eat on game day, and that has turned out to be a event for us to get together. But the ones that played under Coach Bryant were family. I know that the ones playing now are considered family too, but they're so much younger than we are till it's, it's hard to get to know them because they have their group as well as we have our group and that kind of thing.
Right.
I'm like you. I think something definitely needs to be done about the seating for the A club for the football players.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Coach, I love you. Thank you for what you did to me when I was there at Alabama. Did a lot for me.
Well, thank you, Paul. I love you too. And tell Carl Valletto and David Valletto I said hello.
I sure will. Thank you.
Carl was an outstanding player on that 58 team, and he was really a tough customer. I'll tell you that right now.
Yes, he was. He still is, and so was David. David was a tough customer, and David's grandfather actually played football. David's part of 3 generations, I think, along with the neighbor's family. I think it might be the only 3 in Alabama history.
I think so. David's chip off the old block too. He was head when he was out there, same as you were.
Thank you, Coach. Peace. I hope to see you soon, Coach.
I hope so too, Paul. And thank you for having me on again. I love you, brother.
I love you too. God bless. So long.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, boy, that was great. Dr. Gary White, just a legend at Alabama, as there's so many, because that's where legends are made. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay tuned for these messages.
There's a reason why Hill Kelly in Pensacola is the #1 selling Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram dealer between Jacksonville and New Orleans. While other dealers have taken advantage of a competitive market with higher prices, Hill Kelly has discounted prices to the lowest of the year. And Hill Kelly in Pensacola won't surprise you with excessive charges beyond the selling price. Come see why people from Milton, Pace, Foley, Bay Minette, Daphne, Gulf Shores, Mobile, and beyond are driving to Hill Kelly in Pensacola to buy their next new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram. At Hill Kelly, the bottom line price and your satisfaction are what really matter. So before you sign, check the bottom line and make the trip to Hill Kelly in Pensacola to see what true local ownership can do for you. At Hill Kelly Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Highway 29 in Car City, Pensacola. Or shop online 24/7 at hillkellydodge.com. When it comes to bottom line pricing, nobody beats a Hill Kelly deal. Nobody.
Hey, Bill, some game, huh?
I haven't really noticed, Paul.
What? The biggest game of the year?
I've been looking over my insurance. Talk about problems I'm trying to figure out.
Well, do what I did. Call the Seiler Agency. They showed me what I needed and what I didn't. They even saved me money. Now, instead of worrying about my insurance, I can worry about the big game.
Contact the Seiler Agency at 476-7443 for all of your insurance needs. Your independent agent for home, auto, boat, RV, commercial, general liability, life, and sound investment strategies. Call 476-7443 today.
Are you riding around in a filthy vehicle? Dirty car no more. Visit Ronnie's Car Wash today to get it shining in no time. They have 3 convenient locations with another coming soon. The unlimited monthly wash packages start as low as $14.95 per month with free vacuums, multi-purpose spray, and towels. Visit them in Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, and soon Crestview. Don't wait, wash today. Be sure to see Ronnie's Car Wash on Facebook to see the latest specials and discounts. You'll be riding and shining in no time.
Step One works so hard to get you in the perfect car. Look Looking for a better car buying experience? With the Step 1 Advantage from Buick GMC, Fort Walton Beach, and Pensacola, receive no-hassle market-based pricing or incentives by pre-ordering. Looking to sell or trade? Our dedicated team will even come to you. Plus, every vehicle sold at Step 1 supports local charities right in your neighborhood. Experience the Step 1 Advantage at Buick GMC, Fort Walton Beach, and Pensacola today.
75 years of service and high tech today. It's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348. High tech is a term often applied to advanced services and products in today's marketplace. And today, glass is much more than a simple painted brittle, see-through stuff we hit baseballs through when we were kids. Glass is now a product with unique flexibility in both performance and application. And Pensacola Glass Company is growing right along. That's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348.
Did you know there's a place where you can get good neighbor service and surprisingly great rates on your home and auto insurance? Yep, and that place is, ta-da, State Farm. Here's the deal. State Farm agent Will Rentschler is your go-to agent in Pensacola, Florida for the service you deserve at the price that you want. So stop shopping around. State Farm agent Will Rentschler has you covered. Call 850-433-4678 for your surprisingly great rates today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Legal disclaimer, individual premiums will vary by customer. All applicants subject to State Farm underwriting requirements.